Good evening and welcome to the Select Board meeting for February 27th, 2024. Coming to order the meeting, and the first item on our agenda is public comment. Anyone wishing for public comment? Miles, anyone on deck? Okay, right. That's yours, public comment. You'll notice Heidi Frail is on Zoom. Mary is not here. We found have the elbow room we richly deserve. And next item on the agenda is application of a change of manager for the all alcohol license, 365 Management Company, doing business as Residence Inn by Marriott Boston Needham. Is Argentina around?
On Zoom, right now.
Okay. Artem, can you unmute and share?
Yes, I just rejoined as the panelist, I guess.
That's fine. I almost upgrade him.
Oh, he's all set.
There he is. All right. Am I pronouncing your name correctly?
Yes.
Thank you. All right. This is an application for change of management. You are now the assistant general manager, and you're going to be manager of record, correct?
Yes, I am.
Okay. You want to walk us through it? Talk to us about your job.
Well, right now I'm kind of for the past few months I was taking like on the daily operations, overseeing daily operations of the hotel, including housekeeping, front desk, food and beverage department. From food and beverage department, we really have only breakfast available at our hotel. We don't have a bar or lounge open.
Excuse me, hold on one sec. Does it have a feedback on? What's the connection doing? This is, yeah. And you're kind of disappearing on screen. You want to try it again? Do we have them? There you go.
Good evening.
All right, try it again. Let's see if the audio is better.
All right, can you hear me now?
Yeah, try.
Okay. Yeah, so as an AGM, overseeing daily operations of the hotel between the departments.
Okay. Yeah, hold on one sec. But Kate, is everything in order?
Yes, it is. Yeah.
Okay. I feel it's my fault. Thank you. Okay. Can we fix that? Okay. Okay. Here's an idea. Can you turn your video off and just do audio?
Sure. All right. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, you sound clearer. I don't know why. But okay, go ahead.
Yeah. All right. So, so you asked me like on my AGM duties, right? Basically.
Okay.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you. Keep talking.
All right. Yeah. So, so I was an AGM since 2022. I started as the operations manager at the Residence Inn in the end of 2020, and then I was promoted to AGM at 2022. And then for the past few months, I was also doing partially general manager's job including my job, and learned a lot of aspects which I haven't been exposed to previously. So that, yeah, but we finally got the new general manager, he actually started yesterday, and yeah, looking forward working with him.
Okay. Thank you. All right, you guys, any questions? Marcus, Heidi, Kathy? Okay. Might I have a motion?
Mr. Chair, I move that the Select Board, as local licensing authority, approve and sign an application for a change of manager to Artem Dinoff for Residence Inn by Marriott Boston Needham, 80 B Street, and to forward this application to the ABCC for approval.
Second.
Thank you. Okay. Any further discussion? Okay, we're gonna do a roll call vote. Heidi,
Yes.
Kathy,
Yes.
Mark,
Aye.
and I vote aye, so it passes. Congratulations. Thank you very much.
Good evening.
Thank you. Okay, next on the agenda. Oh, yeah, you want to do consent?
Yeah.
All right, we're gonna do the consent, and any appointments, just consent, right?
I think it's, yes.
Okay.
So we have some appointments as well. Correct.
All right, in another wrinkle, I'm gonna recuse myself. Marcus has a gavel.
Just to approve the consent. Mr. Chair, I move that we approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Appointments.
And that's for the appointments. And then, as far as, sorry. We have the one item on there, for the consent agenda that Kevin was a part of. We need to.
It's all fine.
Oh, it's all
Just vote
fine.
the whole thing is he's recused.
Perfect. Okay, awesome. And then I will do a roll call vote, or Heidi,
Yes.
Kathy,
Yes.
and I vote yes as well. It passes. Welcome back, Kevin Key.
Thank you. All right, next up is the Community Preservation Committee, CPC Committee. We have Laura Dorfman, co-chair of the CPC, Lauren Spinney, CPC Administrative Coordinator, and Cecilia, who is, of course, an English major. And his favorite book is Farewell to Arms.
I may have been the one that gave Tyler the heads up that that question was coming.
Good question. Okay. Great to see you. Thanks for coming. Tell us what we have for CPC.
So we prepared a memo for your review, 2 memos actually. Okay, we prepared 2 memos for your review. Hopefully you have them.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how you want to start, which one you want to pass first.
Well, I could speak to the finance article first.
All right.
That was first in their memorandum.
Yeah.
As you might be aware, the Community Preservation Act requires that the committee and the town set aside 10% of the local real estate tax surcharge receipts, as well as the state matching funds, into each of 3 specific special reserve categories. That's community housing, open space, and historic resources. So the first finance article outlines what the appropriation would be to each of those special reserve categories. I will point out that the CPC has chosen to set aside 11% into each of them instead of 10,
Okay.
and I think that's just to cover, I believe, any variances that may come up between our estimated receipts and the actual receipts when they come in. And then also, since 2022, the committee has elected to double the amount that's set aside for the community housing reserve to 22%. And so I believe that likely the committee will vote to do that again this year.
Lauren, can you bring the microphone a little closer? Either one of them.
Oh, sure, sorry.
Right, and so to be clear, you're doing a hearing on March 13th, correct? So these numbers still.
We are doing a public hearing,
Yes,
correct?
Public
Yes.
public hearing on March 13th at 7 PM.
Yes, March 13th at 7 PM at the Public Services Administration Building.
Charles River Room?
Charles River. So from there, we also have 3 grant requests that the committee is reviewing this year for fiscal year 2025. One is from the Housing Authority for the Linden the Linden Street redevelopment. One from the Department of Park and Recreation, which is the redevelopment of the Needham High School tennis courts. And then a third, which is brought jointly by Park and Rec as well as Public Works, and that's for replacement of fencing and fencing hardware at the DeFazio complex.
Laura, anything to add? Do you want us to walk it through?
I'm sorry?
What's the, tell us about the committee. What was the sense of the committee?
The sense of the committee is to support all of these articles.
Okay. Thank you. Hold up, open up, Kathy, anything?
I'm happy to see these. I'm happy to see the Linden Street on here and that the sense of the committee is positive, as well as the tennis courts, for sure, that those, having taught at the high school, I mean, those have been unusable. So that's wonderful to see that the money was there. The fencing I'm less familiar with, but I trust that is a need.
There was a site visit.
And I will highlight that the tennis courts will be adding additional tennis courts at the property, so it's moving from 4 to 8 so that they can host tournaments there moving forward.
4 to 8, like
Yeah.
4 more, okay.
Yes.
Oh, great, okay. I know it's gonna come up because I was asked about it. How many people have asked for pickleball?
A lot, but I
was gonna say
believe
quite a
that there
few.
will not be pickleball at that facility.
Not this location.
Yeah, but it will lighten the load for tennis courts throughout the rest of the community because that site will have more, so pickleball can move to other
Okay,
sites.
Mr. Chair, it's my understanding that if they paint them for pickleball, they can't use them for tournaments.
oh,
That makes sense.
Okay.
But it will free up the other courts for consideration.
that sounds that. Excellent. In Linden Chamber, Linden Street Development, we're good on that? Okay. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Absolutely. That is a request for funds for development. We have done extensive research along with Reg Foster,
Okay,
working with the Cambridge Housing Authority, also with a consultant that the town has hired, who has specialized in these kinds of affordable projects. She's been really helpful in guiding us along in terms of understanding all the funding sources. There are 14 funding sources besides CPC funds. That are grant would represent like 10% of the total project cost. But understanding, the sources and the timing of all of this wouldn't be possible without the consultant. So she's been great. I think we all have a good understanding of the timeline. And clearly there's a need. I don't think anyone could argue with that.
Yeah.
But a lot of sources are predicated on other sources. It's not straightforward. So we're supportive as a committee. We probably will be looking for some grant agreement language, which we will work on with both the consultant and town council.
you repeat that
Within the.
from the very beginning. No, just the last part.
I could, I sleep with it every night. So when we grant this, if we appropriate the funds, there's an agreement,
Okay,
and we will want to add certain caveats to the agreement,
okay,
which we will work on with Cecilia Lauren, town council, our consultant.
Okay, thank you. No, I understand the money we're putting in, the town is putting in, is leveraging a lot more, so.
Correct.
They're requesting 5.5 million, and the total project cost right now is about upwards of 83 million, so
Wow,
we're dropping the
okay,
bucket.
okay. All right.
So, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
One other thing, just to highlight, my understanding is that in competing for those state grants, and the state grants bring the federal grants, that in competing for those, a community has to show commitment. And
Correct.
the way to show commitment is through funding. And
That's
so
correct.
we would not be competitive for the state and federal money unless we spent some of our own money. I think it's important for people to understand that.
That's correct. In fact, some of the funds would not be appropriated by these public funding sources if there weren't the CPC grant.
Thank you. Heidi, you had a question?
I just wanted to say thank you to the CPC for making this possible. I think it's clear that this is enabling a huge project that's of incredible benefit to the town to move forward. I just wanted to ask or talk about how CPC seems to be dispersing quite a bit of money this year. And I want to know kind of what the impact will be on future years. I think we all have seen that state revenues are dropping. And so I just want to understand, giving out this much funding this year, what will happen in future years?
So I'm gonna let Lauren or Cecilia answer that, Heidi, if that's
Yeah.
okay?
So a majority of the 5.5 million, so 3.6 million, is coming from the community housing reserve. So it's been money that's specifically been set aside solely for community housing. And since I've been with a part of CPC for the last about 4 years, the Housing Authority's been the only entity that has come forth with a community housing project. So it is, specific for that. So if we weren't to use it for this project, it would continue sitting in that kind of bucket, for lack of a better term, waiting for a project worthwhile. The other 1.8 million is coming from CPA free cash, but we do replenish the community housing reserve every year. And so that's kind of, it will drain the community housing reserve bucket, but next year we'll throw in more money just like we have historically and build that back up, along with our CPA free cash and our general reserve.
Thank
But
you.
we can anticipate that the state contribution may decrease in the future. Is that true?
Yeah, we that is taken into account, but regardless of if the state contribution decreases or increases, we're still bringing in money and we would still be setting aside that money. It would just fluctuate in value.
Great, thank you.
Great.
The other, I know one thing that's come up a few times, so we can address it here, is that if we were to give the Housing Authority the $5.5 million grant and they were not to be successful in obtaining the other funding, that money would not have been spent yet. So there is that kind of caveat. They don't get the money in hand until they actually use it, and it's a reimbursement process. So if that were to come about, that would be a discussion that the Housing Authority and CPC would continue to have years down the road.
Thank you. Anything else? Heidi, you good?
Kathy, you want to say anything about T-Chalk and their oversight of it? Of the,
I mean, I
Linda?
can mention it.
I think it might be, yeah.
Just it's relevant to this point. Maybe we'll do it now instead of in the committee updates, but T-Chalk has been reviewing and overseeing the expenditures that the Needham Housing Authority has had of the CPC grant that it got several years ago. And T-Chalk will continue to perform oversight, should this money be approved by town meeting and should the project happen. So there will be town oversight of this money on an ongoing basis.
We appreciate that.
Excellent. Great. Anything else, you guys? Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thanks for your time.
All right. Next up, the Great Plain Avenue corridor redesign.
I don't see Karen's.
Is Karis here?
We need to wait for Karen's.
Oh, we have to wait. Hold on. We can do consent and gender again. All right.
We can do,
Forward to the climate.
we can do
Yeah, you
several
want
of
to
mine
jump
if
to
you-
town manager report? Okay. While we wait, we're going to do the town manager, so we're jumping ahead in to town manager Kate Fitzpatrick.
Great, thank you. So the first item for the board's discussion is the concept of creating a permanent climate action committee. As you know, the Climate Action Plan Committee was consolidated to develop the roadmap that they are completing now, and their terms run out at the end of this fiscal year. So the sense was it would make, they recommended, and I think the board had discussed at its goal setting, that it would make sense to have a board that's overseeing efforts in this area. So we're proposing, this is only a discussion item tonight, but that we create a climate action committee, which would have 9 members from our various boards. It is important to note that we did propose that the boards that are involved, the Select Board, the Planning Board, the Concom, PVPC, the Mobility Planning Committee, have the authority to designate a designee, because there are a lot of committees and members of these boards are working at their own meetings and then a lot of other meetings. And it's often an opportunity, for instance, to tap a former member or somebody who had worked closely with the board on a particular matter. So we proposed the 9-member committee. I'd also note one of the ideas that we've been looking at is appointing youth members to some committees. They're non-voting, but it's a way to encourage people to be interested in local government, just one of the other ways that we're working on. And we've had a lot of input from youth on a lot of projects that we're doing lately, and I think it would be very helpful. So they're non-voting, but that would be a proposal that you would look at. And then the charge would be to provide input and oversee the things that the town is working on and provide recommendations to the board for setting goals and to shepherd essentially the roadmap forward over the next few years. We would propose to get any feedback from any. We have sent it to everybody who would be a potential member, and noted that the board is likely to adopt the measure. It's meeting on March 12th, so if we hear any feedback, we may bring you some revision. And if the board members have any ideas, that'd be helpful, and we could update them as well. So again, that's a voting item for March. Any feedback?
Actually, yeah, I guess I like the designee part. That's a great idea. It allows us to tap a lot more. Marcus?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I agree with having the youth member on there and increasing that civic engagement at an early age is super important. And then also, as we talked about some of the different boards being able to designate a designee. So you said it can be former members, or also can it be someone just like as far as in that field, like a professional in that field? So we have the 2 resident at-large members, but possibly those would be residents. I mean, everybody's probably is a resident, but you know what I mean? Like if they designate somebody, then we can possibly have, when I'm thinking about on behalf of the select board, so if we designate somebody, do they speak on our behalf, or how does that work?
Yeah,
Just trying to understand.
So the staff will put this together, assign sort of subject matter expert areas for each of the boards. So whoever is assuming you adopt this, whoever you appoint should have some understanding, or good understanding of governance of municipalities, and clean energy supply. So that is, maybe it's not a former member, maybe there's a volunteer who just really fits that. That would be a perfect opportunity. And they've listed out, I think it's a great idea, what, for instance, Concom, there may be a specialist in natural resources who could fill that.
Yeah, okay, thank you so much.
Great. Yes, Kat.
I would also just comment that I think it's a really good idea to make this permanent, and the committee so far has done a really incredible job, and there's no way that we could be done with this
Ever?
since the climate crisis is not solved, and things will be changing. So, I think this is a good move to make this permanent.
Yes, I mean, it's timely that it's February and there's 60 degrees today. And the committee did, to pat myself on the back, but also everyone else was on the committee. Climate actually did a great job. We got through so much.
Yes.
We did a lot. We catapulted Needham from a to a leadership position in the state. So it did great, so it's good to keep it going. All right, and we'll vote on this in a subsequent meeting.
March 12th. Yeah.
Okay.
Mr. Chair,
Oh, yes.
may I ask one question? I also think it's a fantastic thing to institutionalize this. And as Kathy says, this is nowhere near done, so we shouldn't be done either. I did just have a question. Why is the youth member non-voting?
I think that this is an experiment that we don't have a lot of experience with. And it seemed a way to be an entree. We could reevaluate it in the future. That's just how we thought of it. It's 9 members plus the youth members, so they would be, we do have other boards that have both some voting and some non-voting, so.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, I'd love to suggest just pondering that, because I guess I sort of feel like if there's anyone who's got some skin in the game, it's going to be the kid on that committee. And I'd love for them to feel that they have a true voice.
great. Thank you. I'll take a look. Yep.
Okay. Great, okay. Are we good?
Yep.
All
Are
right.
you all set, Karis? Your team? Yeah. Karis is here.
All right, next on the agenda, we're going back up to the Great Plain Avenue Corridor redesign concept presentations. Karis Lustig is coming up, and Tyler, the new Director of Streets and Transportation, whose favorite book is Slaughterhouse 5. He's also an English major. Good evening. Thanks for coming.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I am here today just to provide a little bit of context for the presentations that you're about to see. We met late summer, early fall with the board to discuss the downtown redesign. We're looking at the entire Great Plain Ave corridor of the downtown. And we decided that instead of continuing to pursue the same path forward where we had redesigned the town in several different phases and we're going to construct it, that we would really look at each segment of the town as its own standalone and think about what we wanted the downtown to look like. So in order to accomplish this, we have solicited from our pre-qualified engineering firms some proposals that you'll be hearing today. This is very similar to a request for proposal process where, you know, you're really getting a proposal for what the design of this downtown would be, not an actual design of what the downtown will be. We did add a little bit of resources to this process where we gave some funds to the various firms so they could help provide a little bit more visual cueing, particularly around conceptuals and drawings. Typically, that's not part of a traditional RFP process. It's fairly expensive. So we wanted to make sure that when we were evaluating these proposals, we had a good idea of what their vision was. We had 4 of the 5 pre-qualified engineering firms respond to this proposal. The focus that we feel like we're evaluating on is on their vision, their ability to take input from the information that we provided all of the firms about what the select board had sort of viewed as their values back in the fall, as well as other information we had from the process that we had done before in the downtown redesign. And then also really looking at their community outreach and consensus building plans, because we know that whatever direction we take with the downtown, that's going to be a key element of success in this particular project. We have a formal selection committee of town staff that will be going through these proposals, evaluating them. We'll have a secondary interview with the consultants to really drill down on some of the technical aspects of the proposal. But the opportunity here is for the public and for the board to really provide some feedback on these proposals, what they like about the proposals, what maybe they didn't like quite as much. And this is sort of, you know, the beginning of this process, kind of the start, not the destination. So really kicking this off so we can continue making measured progress forward and having our downtown redesigned. So with that,
The first one is Fuss and O'Neill.
Yeah.
We have 1 at a time.
Fuss and O'Neill.
Great.
Karis, you want to stay?
All right, so we have Matthew and Eileen, right?
We have
All right,
Arnold Robinson, Ian Law.
welcome. Thank you.
Hello, thank you for having us. We're excited to be at this point. I know we started the week before Christmas on this endeavor, so we're pleased at the prospect of being your team to take your vision into reality for a vibrant, more vibrant and multimodal downtown. My name is Eileen Gunn. I'm an associate with Fuss O'Neill, business line manager. I'm also the client manager for our current engineering on-call. And I'm going to give a high-level overview of our process. Then I'm going to introduce the team, and then they're going to go into some more detail. Oh, I'm supposed to be clicking here. Okay. I wouldn't have looked at the presentation at all. Thanks for the reminder. Oh, we love it when technology works.
It's a beautiful day.
All right, so starting from the beginning, when we first got this request for proposal, when we knew it was coming for a while, but after listening to all your recorded meetings and reviewing all the materials, we really stepped back from what is a math problem here, a very complex math problem, and started listening more to the experience people wanted to have in their downtown. And what we heard was we want it to feel like a village. We want it to generate economic vitality. We want it to be a destination, a desired destination for people outside of Needham as well. We want it to be safe. We want it to be accessible for all modes of transportation. And we don't want traffic to back up. And you wanted more outdoor dining, wider sidewalks, placemaking. So this is a challenge, given that this is a major urban arterial, through your town. You're not the only town that in Massachusetts that has this problem. But hearing the emphasis on placemaking and social gathering and economic vitality, we decided to bring in our experts from our community development department, our planners, our economic developers, our landscape architects, who really look beyond the streetscape at the drivers to what makes a vital downtown. And that's when we brought in Ian and Arnold and really started crafting our approach. And what our approach is, if you'll look at this slide, it is a community-driven design process that is informed by analysis of, we've given you 4 alternatives, we'll get to that in a minute, or 4 samples really. But diving into the analysis of the trade-off, you have trade-offs, you have limited space. I think it was Marion Cooley, who's not here in one of the recordings, like, well, we can't have it all, like, what's gonna give? We wanna give you a process that's gonna help you come to consensus on that, but only when you can understand what the trade-offs are. So come in with the analysis on the alternatives. We have a very robust engagement plan outlined in detail in the proposal that Arnold and Ian are gonna go through. And then, move towards consensus. We didn't want to give you one drawing and presume that we know the answer to your solutions. The way we're working now with the DPW is awesome. Like, it's a very iterative process on designing. And we need that input from you, the back and forth. We can't design in a vacuum. And one slice through your downtown doesn't indicate what needs to happen along the entire corridor as well. So that very much informed our team and our process, and I'm going to introduce these guys very quickly. Matt Skelly is our lead transportation traffic engineer. He leads a group of 17 transportation engineers and planners in Boston and Quincy. Very adept at traffic analysis and complete streets design. One of his premier projects that he's leading right now is the Safe Neighborhoods Initiative for downtown Boston, redesigning streets very rapidly, like rapid safety fixes. He would be the person answering questions like, what's gonna happen to traffic? Is it gonna run through this neighborhood? Are there alternative routes? What if we take a lane? He's gonna be your guy on that. Arnold Robinson is our regional planning director and a certified planner, historian, historic preservationist. 30 years of economic revitalization work in New England, former professor of all this stuff. And he leads our engagement efforts for like more complex projects like this, where you really need to build consensus. And I think his signature is there a lot of success stories of engagement leading to consensus, leading to design, implementation, construction. So we have a proven method here. And Ian Law is a landscape architect and very experienced, 30 years experience in downtown revitalization. He helps us look beyond the streetscape of, and I know he walked your streets tonight beforehand, what's happening in other factors that is leading to what's going on downtown. So that kind of bird's eye view, but he's also your designer in terms of working with the engineers, the transportation engineers to design. And he'll answer the questions like, what happens if you remove, what happens to businesses if you remove parking? So we have a very multidisciplinary team here, and we're a multidisciplinary firm. I haven't even touched on climate resilience, but nothing is designed anymore without considering climate resilience. Yeah, so with that, I'm going to turn it over to Matt.
Thanks, Eileen. And Eileen gave me a great head start here to say that it's really important for us to build on the work that's already been done. And if slide here, if you can kind of see what's in those bubbles up on the screen, that's really the process that we want to use to get from an initial project scoping meeting where we're going to really like hammer out all the details of how this work will get done with town staff, developing a project advisory committee, figuring out what all of the framework for decision making is going to be, and making sure everybody's really comfortable with that, running right through the meat of the public engagement process, all the way through to a decision about what gets built, construction documents, and actual construction. And in there you see the red dot says pilot. That's an option too. If we potentially have come up with solutions that could be piloted, that's something that is very much on our radar. And to put on my traffic engineer hat very quickly, there's a lot of different elements that are very important to this area. Obviously, cut through traffic, what's going to happen in the neighborhoods if we change things downtown, dealing with your T crossing that's right in the vicinity of this work, making sure that your traffic signals are all using the latest technology to move cars through as quickly as possible, and just like developing that balance. How do you kind of get the most out of this space? Putting on my project manager hat, I'm going to be also in charge of bringing to bear the expertise of this group of very talented and knowledgeable experts in their fields. All that Fuss & O'Neill has to offer, making sure that we're all organized and delivering to Needham what's needed here for this project. A big tool for that is a detailed project schedule. We've included that in our proposal. And we'll make sure we're working with the town to finalize that and stick to it. And I'm really confident that we're going to do a great job with that, because we're already doing a great job in Needham with that. We're working on Dedham Ave. We've got plans, thank you, a plan set into the DPW for Dedham Ave that's going to go in construction this summer. We're also working on Webster Street with some really important safety improvements. Everything so far has been delivered on time and on budget. And honestly, we really love working with the town staff. They're really great people to work with. So while I might think that the most important thing about this project is getting the traffic right, what we really care about is figuring out what Needham thinks. And I'm going to turn it over to Arnold to talk more about how we're going to do that.
It's always great when Matt does my part of the presentation and says what the community engagement part is about. Really, I haven't read the other consultants' proposals. I don't know their approach, but I do want to highlight that for us, community engagement is at the heart of what we do. It is not a checkbox. It is not a, hey, we had one public hearing and people came out and, spoke at the microphone and had their piece, and the design is what it is based on who decides, in the power structure. We genuinely believe, and it's in our proposal, that the best design solutions come out of an engaged public process. And on that slide, there are really 3 tools that we use to do that. Sometimes they're seen as synonyms, and they're not. So for us, it's about community, it's about communication, it's about outreach, and it's about engagement. So I want to break those down just a touch, because communication is about providing project information to everyone who wants to play a role in the process, who wants to learn about it, that they have equitable access to that information, no matter what language they speak, no matter what meeting they can make, no matter what digital access they have, that information is accessible to them. So we provide that so that everyone can access that. The second piece is, though, you can't just make it so that those who have the time to take a dive into this can participate in the process. We seek to get out there. That's the outreach part of this, which is to go to where people are and say, here's what this project is about. And here, it's not the technical part of what happens. It's how do you live your life in Needham? What's your daily commute? Where do you shop? Where do your kids go to school? And people know that they are invited into that process and that we want to hear what they think about that. The third leg of the stool for us is the engagement part, and that's the back and forth part. So it's one thing to provide that information, it's another to go out and share that information with folks and to start to talk. The best projects happen when you're sitting down with professionals, designing together, hearing needs together, prioritizing things together for the community. As Eileen said, you have a lot of competing interests for this corridor that you want to have, and you can't have it all necessarily. It's hard to fit it all within the geometry. So for us, we try to build a process where we share things openly, not just the data, but what's the decision-making process going to be? Who has the power to say yes, no? Who has the power to have a voice in the design? And when that becomes transparent, and when you're sharing that, we can set up a series of events, a series of engagements, where people can really share what they want out of things, know what the group's priorities are heading towards, and Ian's going to talk about that in detail. And facilitate a dialogue that gets us to, ideally, consensus about a design and programs that you want to have in a program sense of what's happening in the corridor. So we've done that. You'll see it in our proposal. I'm up to about 56 community-led design processes that I've managed in the course of my career. It's my passion, and it is, we believe it's at the core of a successful process. And if you remember, there was a very old ad that Fram oil filters used to have. It was, you can pay me now or you can pay me later. And what it meant was, you can either pay for maintenance and do the hard work by bits and pieces. And that's what we see our process as. It's messy, it's hard, you're engaging a lot of different people. But in the end, when you get to town meeting for the vote, everybody's with you, they understand it, and they can vote yes. And they can get there and understand it. We've seen towns or municipalities do a project where they come up with a great design, but nobody understands it, they haven't built consensus. Those projects rarely succeed. And so that's at the heart of what we do. I want to turn it over to Ian, because for us, it's about interactive design. And Ian is a master at something that's at the heart of this, which is a 2-day community design charrette.
Thanks, Arnold. Well, as Arnold said, core to our approach to both engagement and the transition to the creative design process is this intensive 2-day community design charrette. In addition to just really springboarding the project and getting a lot of excitement out of the gate, the real goal of the charrette is to work with all of you in the community to help you make informed decisions about the direction of the streetscape project, and ultimately get to a preferred alternative much sooner in the process. So why is that important? We believe the main reason why that's so important is what both Arnold and Eileen were alluding to. You have a lot of ambitions for what the streetscape is. So to help you get to the priorities of how you're utilizing that space from building face to building space, and help you come to a consensus on what is the most critical elements, because quite frankly, you're not going to be able to do it all, and you're going to have to make some really tough choices. So if we can get to that point earlier in the process, we can focus more of our attention, more of our resources on the creative aspects of evolving that design to really make it special and unique to Needham, to be able to get into the detailing of the placemaking as well as meet your aggressive schedule. The charrette process accomplishes in days what the conventional process would take weeks or even months to do. And so I'd like to get into what those 2 days would look like so you understand it a little bit more. We're going to kick that process off with a public walk and talk. So we're all walk the streets together, have the opportunity for the community participants and the design team to interact, share observations, ideas, concerns together, and really get a chance to look at the streetscape through others' perspectives, which is important. We're gonna then regroup that evening for a public visioning workshop. That workshop will be 2 parts. 1 part presentation, 1 part open house. The presentation will be a deep dive, a comprehensive dive into the existing conditions, make sure we all are on the same page with any design parameters, as well as an initial review of the preliminary traffic analysis. After that, and Eileen alluded to this, we think it's a byproduct of our process of zooming out first before we zoom in. We're going to have a discussion with you about urban planning considerations that we think impact downtown vibrancy, like long-term planning considerations that impact vibrancy and economic development opportunities. But at the heart of that first night is going to be the review of 3 preliminary conceptual cross-sections. Those cross-sections are going to select, we'd get your feedback, as well as some of the feedback from the previous studies to help identify what those cross-sections are that we'd come to the table with. But the idea would be that they would each be distinct and prioritize a different thing of how we're utilizing that space. And we'd talk through the benefits of it and all of those important trade-offs to understand, as well as the traffic impacts for each different alternative. So as an example, if we were to do a road diet that allowed for a 2-way cycle track, sharing the sidewalk zone. Another option might be a road diet that gave single tracks in each direction within that zone. Combination of a smaller road diet, but allowing for turning lane, while also trying to maximize the sidewalk, but having to sacrifice the bike infrastructure. And then lastly, a full road diet while trying to completely maximize the sidewalk zone so you can consider things like outdoor dining, placemaking, landscape, etc. What's important to note, I want you to note graphically, at this point of the process, our graphics are intentional, these cross-sections are intentionally void of a lot of character, style, placemaking, because we frankly haven't been informed yet. And we're really wanting to focus on that utilization and prioritization of space. But as we get more information and that process continues, we wanted to show you some examples of how that graphic communication evolves, which goes again to help you make informed decisions. So once we've identified preferred alternatives, those graphics will naturally evolve with it. We'll start to understand materiality, styles, how can we demonstrate placemaking, how do we demonstrate a sense of place and how a place feels, what's the vibe of the place. But going back to night 1, I'll go back to this slide here. Once we've thoroughly reviewed those benefits and trade-offs, we'll have an interactive discussion, and then we'll transition to the open house phase of night 1. That'll be pretty simple. We'll have a bunch of stations. 3 of those stations will be those 3 concepts that highlighted those priorities. You get to directly interact with the design team to review those benefits and trade-offs. We'll have some other stations that look to gain the participants' visual preference on style, characteristics, uses, things like that. But ultimately, at the end of night one, we're going to ask the participants to vote on those three to understand where those priorities ranked. And that's really going to tee us up for the second day. The second day is one thing that we think is maybe a distinguishing factor for us that we do a little bit different in our charrette process. In addition to the information sharing and the information gathering that's fundamental to a charrette, on that second day we draw. And we are going to, not just in cross-section, but in full plan view, take the top two choices from night one and fully develop a first pass conceptual drawings for the entirety of the study area. Then we're going to invite you back that night, present those to you, and then have an interactive discussion. What did you like about it? What didn't you like? What things would you want to change? What new ideas surface? And we think collectively through that process that we're going to gain consensus about where the community's priorities lie and hopefully guide us towards that preferred alternative sooner in the process and really establish the framework for both the creative and technical portions of the project to come. So with that, I'll give it back to Eileen to close us out.
I'll just wrap up. Thank you, Ian. You know, any of these firms you're going to hear from tonight are very well qualified to design a streetscape for you. They wouldn't be here if they weren't. So I think what sets Fuss and O'Neill out, and I've only been here 4 years, but what I see as sets us apart is this value-added aspect of the whole picture of the community development and the economic vitality and the process that we offer to get to consensus. That's proven. So I'll just leave it there. See if you have any questions.
Thank you very much. Marcus.
Thank you all so much for being here. I just want to take what you said into consideration earlier about not just focusing on the people that have time to do this. I think that's something that you said. So with the two-night aspect, for the people that are able to show up to that and vote for that night and then draw the next day, how would you accommodate? I'm sure there's many people that won't be able to show up for that night. Is there some kind of virtual component or voting online or access to what's being done that night so they have an option? So what if it's 3 nights, so people that couldn't come or vote that night have the next day to do that, and then that third night can be the drawing, or just to give more time?
Yeah, I've done a couple of different ways of extending that input and listening period in mind. So time for folks to come in person is one way to do it. Another way that I've done it is we have sort of boxed up the results of the 2 days of the charrette that have come out, and we've put those on our project web. We've made hard copy survey forms and presentation forms, and we then shared that with partner organizations to distribute it out, because we recognize people might be away that 2 days. They might not have the ability to have a babysitter for their kids that night or whatever it might be. We never want to close the door after just those 2 days. So I've had a 30-day period where we've said, hey, if you can get to it virtually, please get to it virtually. The other thing we've done, and it depends where you stand on it, I've had a stakeholder committee. My most successful projects have a stakeholder committee, which represent a diverse cross-section of the community. And they become my connectors to other audiences. I'm never going to be the best connector to all of Needham. We're the consulting firm. But those people with social networks, with trusted connections, they become ambassadors for that project. And so they could take that, what I would call wet clay of 2 alternatives, and say, hey, these things came up in the session. We can have them come in and talk to you for half an hour, and then you guys tell us what you think about this. And for different audiences, it could be a Sunday church group, it could be a group that meets on a Wednesday night because it's a civic organization, whatever it is. When that design is in its wet clay format, that's the most important time to get input and to extend that window.
Thank you.
Yes, I definitely really appreciate the focus on getting community buy-in and building consensus. And I think sort of building on what Marcus was saying, it's so hard. People are so busy, and it's so hard to really get people engaged, even though they do care. But people just are, have a lot of other commitments. And so you mentioned the outreach to where people are. Like, how do you actually do that?
if I have a stakeholder committee, that's the locus for where that happens. Because they're gonna be able to do two things. They're gonna be able to identify those groups of stakeholders and constituents whose voices should be heard. The second part is that even if they are not able to provide that access and entree, they're gonna know who can, right? They're gonna be the connectors to do that. So we usually build for these projects a sort of functional shorthand database, which lists the people, who they're connected with, what their digital connection would be, what their snail mail connection would be, sort of where they are and where they go and what's the best way to connect with them. There is no one right solution to connect. There's multiple channels. So by having that sort of what I call air traffic control database, we're then able to hit a broad diversity of the community in different ways. And it's not that complicated. Sometimes the simplest ways are the most effective to be there. For instance, we did a bike ped project in Bristol, Rhode Island. Being at the supermarket every Friday and Saturday made more connections than anything else, more than the website got for hits. That was our doorway in, because everybody went to the same market on those 2 days. That was our way of connecting.
Arnold, could I piggyback
Go.
on that? I think it's kind of addressing both points. I do think what we're proposing with both public aspects of the charrette, obviously besides the walk and talk, but even the existing conditions review, all of those presentations we could do in a format just like this. So it could be live and projecting remote at the same time. Even the design review meeting, after we've drawn all day, we will photograph and overlay and plug all of that into a PowerPoint that we'd be presenting that night anyway. So as we're presenting and facilitating the discussion, I think we'd be able to do that remotely as well, as like a hybrid.
I would also add the one thing that has blown me away is multilingual cable access shows have been phenomenally successful. I've been amazed the number of people who say, I was up with the baby at 2 a.m. and I saw you presenting about this project. I was like, I cannot believe we connected with you that way.
I remember that. Okay, hey Heidi, I can't see you're not in the monitor.
Yes,
so.
please. Thank you for the presentation. It looks really, really interesting. My question has to do with the enormous amount of change that Needham is undergoing currently. This process will be a long one and will mesh with a whole bunch of other projects, notably MBTA communities. We have a lot of climate change going on, a lot of changes to our parking scenarios. And so I'm curious if you can speak to how you can, or how you will, incorporate those changes into your designs, and also to deal with questions from residents who are in multiple stages of education and acceptance of a lot of the change that's already occurring and are now looking at a change to their most familiar streetscape.
I could jump in and start from a traffic perspective. Certainly, any changes that are coming to housing, supply, parking, all of those things we have tools to model. Without getting too deep into the weeds on it, it's certainly something that we're comfortable with and will be working to become aware of as we're doing our modeling around traffic. I don't know if you guys want to talk about the other. Like for instance, we know that in town, Needham's working with right now the DOT to do bottleneck reduction right in downtown, and so that's something that we've already kind of worked on incorporating in our traffic plans.
Heidi, one thing that I would say is the parallel project, I would say, with my experience, is the one we're wrapping up right now in Norwalk, Connecticut. And in that one, it has been critical with multiple moving pieces to let the town take the lead in communicating about those multiple moving pieces. We would be a consultant on one part of a multi-part effort. And it's really important that the structure of communication to citizens and stakeholders sort of come from the town with a capital T in my mind. We are certainly want to be your trusted advisors and feed the information about this particular project and objectively tell you where it overlaps with things that we're seeing from a planning perspective. But what we did in that one was we coordinated with the city's communication office, its web designers, and 3 other consultant teams who were working on related projects related to mass transit, climate, and then parking, to make sure that we were cross-linking to all of our data and that our processes were linking so that people who are on a steering committee for one project would be looped into our process for our own project. We wanted to avoid conflicts and make sure that they weren't getting in each other's way. And at best, we were making sure that the information was arriving at the right point to inform each of the projects as they progressed over their long arc. So I think that's the way we built it. We wove it with the team, with the town in sort of a position. We would have basically, to make that work, we had monthly coordination meetings between all the teams in the city.
I would just add one more quick thing is I think Eileen or Arnold had mentioned this before, but any new state-of-the-art streetscape should really be, especially in a downtown zone, should be taking in account heat reduction and progressive stormwater management. And so from that aspect, I think those are things that we would be bringing up as considerations to be strongly thought through as we're weighing out those trade-offs as we go through the process. So those are all near and dear to our hearts, and so we certainly would talk through the value of those, both in the immediate streetscape as well as it extends and connects, to the neighborhood and the bigger picture.
Thank you.
Thank you. If I can jump in, somewhat related. We gave you a slice to look at Great Plain Ave, but as you were looking at it, did you kind of find your fingers itching just to look down Chestnut Street and Chapel? I mean, you kind of saying like, okay, so I mean, that's my question. Is a study area, should we be more organic and larger, or can we just do this Great Plain Ave piece?
I would say certainly in the preliminary aspects of the project, I think should certainly look at that greater context, because I think you're exactly right. It's begging to be looked at there. And then depending on the nature of the construction document project, we can phase it. We could, so you could plan for something that's bigger and broader and then zoom into whatever confines the detailed construction effort wants to be as the part of the project. Would you agree with that, Matt?
Yeah, and I brought up that bottleneck reduction project. That has, includes another intersection, Chapel up further north. In some of our, I mean, we certainly, when we were brainstorming, you kind of said it exactly. We couldn't help ourselves from talking about like, well, what about Chapel? Could you shut it down on the weekends maybe? And like, what are some other options of building place here? So it's not to say that I would, say you can't do the project as it is, but certainly it does lend itself to, expansion.
Most of the things you're talking about would be ironed out in the first scoping meeting.
Oh, yeah. Okay. All right. Strange question. Ian, you're the tree guy, right? In all these sketches, I'm seeing dozens of little sapling trees everywhere. Is that the best way? I mean, I think trees in urban environments, I love them to go together, but I've never seen a tree grow healthy in the cityscape. Is that for real, or is it just like temporary decoration? And we replace
it's come a long way. I think it's a fair observation. They play such an important role, both in the placemaking. They provide defensible space for the pedestrians. They help enclose the space to make it feel more like an outdoor room. They obviously provide shade. I mean, it's really exposed out there. So in those hot summer months, it's just more comfortable. It increases dwell time, which is better for business. But you're right, urban trees don't do well, but there's a lot of new methods of how we can make them grow bigger, healthier, and last longer. Recent streetscapes, we've incorporated the use of structural soils. there's enlarged tree pit areas, but basically what that's going to allow is the root zones to grow bigger, have greater access to water, and not just have to live in this little box that ultimately is going to lead to a lot of problems. So that would certainly be part of our approach. That would sort of be a given, to figure out a way to make trees do as best. They're never going to do as well as they're going to do in your backyard, but we can certainly do better than they've done in the past.
Thank you. All right, anything else? This has been lovely. Thank you for the presentation.
Thank you
so
Thank you
much.
for being
Really
here.
appreciate it.
Have a great night.
Harris, who we have next?
Next, we have Environmental Partners.
All right, this is tool design, right? Tool design and environmental partners. Oh, all right. Thank you so much.
Yeah, it's right here. Yeah, they took it with them.
Okay.
Yeah, that was intentional.
That's right.
That was intentional.
Well done.
You're like, well, they don't need this. Yeah, ready for anything. I like that.
Okay, so we have Margaret.
Margot.
I'm sorry, Margot, sure. Conrad and Karen.
Correct.
Welcome.
Thank you.
All right. So walk us through this. We're trying to figure out a downtown.
Yeah, great. Good evening, and thank you for having us here today. So my name is Conrad Ledger. I'm a principal with Environmental Partners. And before I introduce the rest of our project team and our approach, I want to talk a little bit about the downtown and a lot of the reasons that we're here tonight. So the downtown is very nice as it is right now, but it's very vehicle-centric. It prioritizes cut-through traffic and is the main corridor that connects Route 128 to neighboring communities. The pictures that we're showing up on screen are representative of what's out there today. So through the RFQ process and the information that the town provided as part of that process, we realized that the town's vision for this corridor has really changed over the past couple of years. During the pandemic, you even implemented some place-making processes like outdoor dining, and then also completed the revitalization of the town common. So all of those implementations have kind of led us to where we are today. So I want all of you to bear with me for a minute here, and I'm going to ask you to kind of do a little exercise with me. So I want you to look at this location, and I want you to place yourself in this location. And I encourage the folks in the audience and at home to do the same. And I want you all to close your eyes. And I want you to think about what you want this corridor to look like in the future, and what you see and what you hear. You might look ahead and you might see folks enjoying outdoor dining on a busy night at one of the restaurants on the corridor. You might shift to the right and you might see a family and their dog walking across the street trying to get to the town common, but doing so in a safe accommodation. You might look left down Chapel Street and you might see children riding down Chapel, turning left onto Great Plain, heading to Green to play some basketball. Lastly, you might look over at the town common, and it's booming. There's people there, there's folks there with their dogs, with their families, enjoying that town space. So I want you all to open your eyes now and look at what's on screen. What's the difference between those visions and what's on screen? The answer is people. People are going to enjoy outdoor dining. People are going to want to cross that street safely. People are going to ride bikes. And people are going to enjoy that town common. People make spaces vibrant. With that, our interpretation of your vision is people-focused and people-centric. Our goal is to provide infrastructure, resilient infrastructure, to welcome people into the space to use that infrastructure in the end. To explain more about our interpretation of your vision, I'd like to introduce Margot Schoenfelder, EP's project manager for this project. Margot's background consists of being not only a transportation designer, but a transportation planner. That makes her the perfect partner for the community to really work together, work with all stakeholders, and balance that difference between urban design and transportation. So with that, I'll turn it over to Margot.
Great, thanks, Conrad. You holding the clicker? All right.
I will do it.
So many members of the town staff know EP, not only through our work in Needham currently, but in neighboring communities. We've worked as a trusted advisor on a variety of projects and have demonstrated not only our technical expertise, but our dedication to client service. When the RFP for the downtown redesign came out, we immediately thought of Tool as a perfect complement to EP. Tool is an industry leader in creating livable, vibrant communities through streetscape design, truly comfortable pedestrian and bicycle facilities, and cutting-edge safety enhancements. The ways that our team members complement each other have already led us to team in other communities. We are currently working together on Brookline's Vision Zero action plan. As well, our team members have developed personal relationships throughout their careers. Conrad and Jason shared cubicles at a previous company. You know, we're just a collection of individuals that enjoy working together. While Conrad, Karen, and I are here talking to you today, we have a deep bench of very talented technical experts, creative minds, and skilled technicians that are really excited to partner with you on this community building project. As Conrad alluded, I do have a dual background in engineering and planning, and I feel that that makes me uniquely able to serve as a consistent leader throughout the various phases that this project is going to have, from visioning and engagement through design and construction. And with that, I will go to the next slide. So as we developed what we thought was one interpretation of your vision, we not only consulted information that was in the RFP, but also the extensive legwork that the town has already done on this project. When we were collaborating on the vision, there were 6 key elements that became apparent. Considering these 6 elements thoughtfully can lead to a diverse set of visions, from something more subtle to something bolder. We chose to really push the envelope on these 6 elements to show how bold you could go. And we thought that was in line with the community's clear choice to change from the status quo. But we're really eager to work with you and refine your vision further. So our approach takes 3 main stages. First is, of course, community visioning, working with the community to understand what their vision is for this really important area for the community. Next is stakeholder engagement, which we see as starting on day 1 and lasting until construction is completed. Not only getting buy-in from a diverse set of stakeholders, but also making sure that every voice is heard. And we'll go through our multifaceted approach to make that happen. And finally, design and construction. Design will again start from day 1 with high-level conceptual designs and become increasingly detailed as that vision is refined. Next. And I will now turn it over to Karen Fitzgerald, who is an extremely talented landscape architecture expert and very experienced in people-oriented designs, to talk through our community visioning process.
Great. Well, thank you, Margot, very kind. Well, as a team, we were really excited about this project when we first saw it come out, and both the sort of real possibilities here, but also the momentum that you have been building around this project is really exciting to work with a client that has put a lot of work into thinking about this already. We're presenting one vision, and it's basically a translation of our, looking at the streetscape right now, kind of looking broader at the neighborhood, what the existing conditions are, and some of the background work that you've been doing and some of the physical work that you've been doing, together with our expertise as a team, bringing our experience and expertise and sort of best practices to the design to come up with this vision. And we do understand that this is one possible conceptualization. There are many decisions and ideas that would be on the table here. And we would really just want to work with you from the very beginning to solidify that the vision and making sure that that is best for the community and everyone has buy-in. The vision will really drive the rest of the project, so it's really important to get that feedback from everyone in the community and make sure you're comfortable with where the direction of the project is going. And thank you. Well, as planners and designers, we look at the network and we look at the broader, future of the area. We did immediately recognize that any change here in the core of your downtown would be like a catalyst for changes throughout the neighborhood and possibly further through the community. So that will be a really important consideration from the beginning, is to just look at what the implications of changes or active transportation improvements might have towards other open spaces, the library connections, connections to the schools, everything within the neighborhood, and see where that project limit really should be. The transit is also a really key part of this, in understanding both connectivity to transit, but also the future with the MBTA housing plan, what that will mean to this neighborhood, bringing possibly more density in housing, and just really making sure that that is part of the plan going forward and how we accommodate that. Next slide, thanks. So I'd like to just run through some of our elements as Margot sort of started to outline for you. Traffic calming, of course, is paramount. We looked at traffic calming for the whole corridor that we were working with, and that would be, safety at the core. So safety for all modes, including, bicycle, pedestrian, and vehicles, would be at the center of our designs. Bicycle accommodations and multimodal, there's a lot of other things coming down the line that people are rolling on, so making sure that that is part of looking at the future of that and what that means to the space allocation. Green infrastructure is something that we address right up front, and it's always in our streetscape plans. And that includes, the stormwater and water filtration and air filtration, but also street tree planting and shade mitigation, and just general beautification of the area, biohabitat support where we can do that. So the green infrastructure piece is something that is integral to our designs from the beginning. Yes, thanks. Pedestrian accommodation, of course, is central, and making sure that it is safe. We want a lot of people walking around here, feeling comfortable, being able to cross back and forth from one side to the other. Looking at shorter crossings would be something that we would encourage, as well as pedestrian amenities that really enhance the experience of being downtown, and just bring joy into wanting to come down here and hang out and meet your friends and gather. And that kind of brings me to placemaking. Placemaking is something that Tool Design and EP do very well. We put that at the very forefront of our streetscape and downtown designs. And really, our approach to placemaking is based on basically two core principles. One, it must be included from the beginning. It must be part of the design. It cannot be an afterthought looking for places to put, some art here and there. It has to be something that is integral to the design. And two, it really needs to come from the community. So involving the community in the decisions of, public art. Is it a sculpture? Is it a mural? Is it permanent? Is it temporary? Do we make places for transient art? That kind of thing, but really involving local artists, local art commissions, the historic commissions, any kind of cultural, will really give the sense of place and identity to downtown Needham and what is special about Needham. Next slide, thank you. So stakeholder engagement is the core of building this project. We do a lot of different methods for stakeholder engagement. And really, I think one of our first task items would be to sit down with you and ask, what is the best way to engage Needham? And then there are several different tools in our toolbox for that. I think a variety of tools would be needed here to get everyone across the board to participate and get feedback to the project. I'm going to ask Margot to take over here and talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, so really, day one, starting the project, we would love to sit down with town staff and identify that set of stakeholders that needs to be involved in this process. And we understand that's town officials, the general public, and the different stakeholders that are in the public, as well as the business community, because this is a really important project for businesses in the downtown. As I mentioned, stakeholder engagement will take place throughout the project duration, starting off with really gathering as much information as we can. Obviously not starting from square one, because we know you've already done a ton of research. So taking that into consideration and hitting the ground running. Consensus building is probably the most important part of this project. It will not be a success if consensus isn't reached in the entire community. So we have many tools in our toolbox to get to that consensus that we'll talk through. And finally, throughout design and construction, we need to keep people informed on how things are progressing, really until construction is completed. Oh, I'm sorry, can you go back to that? So in terms of the various tools in our toolbox, some components we like to use, a story map is a great way to have a central hub for different types of information throughout the project. It can include mapping, it can include links to previous studies, you name it. We also love having effective social media campaigns to raise awareness of the project and build enthusiasm for it. During the visioning phase, we would love to use a design charrette, as well as open houses. They're really nice ways to encourage collaboration and allow for either one-on-one conversations or small group conversations with members of the design team and other stakeholders. We've all been in those public meetings where it's just a traditional format and one person dominates the conversation, and that's not how you get good input from the community. During the design phase, we would love to hold, engineer office hours to just have a couple hours where anyone can stop by and talk to us about what's going on in the design. So again, lots of different tools, and we will work and talk through what's the best tool for your community in this project. An efficient stakeholder engagement plan is particularly important given the schedule that's set forth in the RFP. We don't have any time to waste. Although, we provided a schedule in our proposal that meets the RFP guidelines, and we believe it's completely realistic, there are a couple scope items that we would love to talk through at the beginning of the project. Depending on what vision the community wants to move forward with, if a bolder vision is proposed, we think tactical urbanism is a great way for the community to test out these new design elements before construction starts. Those can be paint, flexi posts, planters, lots of different treatments, and they're generally low cost, but these demonstrations take time. So that's something that should be built into the schedule. Funding is another really important thing to talk about on day one. If you're setting a target date for construction to start, you need to know how you're gonna have money to build it. So we are very knowledgeable about state and federal funding programs, and we regularly walk our clients through the grant application process, and would love to talk through potential funding mechanisms for this project. During the design phase, we really believe that our extensive construction experience will inform every decision we make, making sure that the vision that we help you refine is grounded in what's constructible. We will not only refine the vision as the design progresses, but we'll consider maintenance for town staff once construction is completed, and also look for opportunities to value engineer. So staying true to the vision, but reducing costs wherever we can. We also understand that the town is looking at potentially pursuing a quiet zone. So we would certainly talk about the design implications of that designation and make sure that whatever design we move forward with is safe for all modes at that rail crossing. We encourage you guys to look through the many projects we've taken from conceptual design through construction with minimal changes. One that comes to mind is Newtonville, where we rehabilitated that village center and it won an ACEC award. But it's really just a testament to our ability to take constructability into account from day one. And when selecting a partner for a project like this, construction is often an afterthought, but really not all firms treat construction the same way. So we understand that ongoing outreach and engagement throughout construction is really important for the project's success. Just one example that we helped the client through construction is the Lexington Center Streetscape project that was on Mass Ave, very heavy commercial corridor. And it took place right after COVID when businesses were still reeling and any change to foot traffic could affect their survival. The project ended up being a big success, with the town engineer even saying it was the best construction project he's ever worked on. And the project went on to receive a national APWA award, and we feel that the outreach was a key component of that.
So as we move into Q&A, we hope that our team has demonstrated a good approach and a sound approach. And really, we understand that one of the biggest challenges in a project like this is balancing the urban design versus the transportation component of it. And to us, really, we've presented our interpretation of your vision, and we purposely did it in a bold manner. Because we want you to realize that the possibilities are there to think outside the box and go to that extreme. So I guess I'll leave it with you that, we want to know how bold will the town end up being.
To answer that question, Marcus?
As bold as we can afford to be.
That's very good. And do you have any questions, Marcus?
I'll let you go. I'll come back.
Heidi? Okay. I can't see Heidi. She's not in monitor, so I got to just ask.
Thanks.
All right, thank you very much. Oh, go ahead,
Thank you,
Heidi.
Mr. Chair. I just want to say that I appreciate that a lot of these elements were brought up in the beginning. I wonder if you ever encounter, this seems counterintuitive, but fatigue on the part of residents with change making and being asked for their opinion. I'm just curious. It has nothing really to do with your presentation. It's just so much of this does hinge on resident engagement, and I'm just wondering what your experience has been across the other projects that
Yeah, I'll start that off. I think the most frustrating thing for a resident is when they give you their input and they don't see it incorporated into future materials or future meetings. So when we get input, the next time we talk to them, say, really appreciate you going out of your way to give us that input. Here's how we took it into account. It's true, they're taking time out of their very busy schedule to let us know what they think, and we really value that. So I'll turn it over to Karen or Conrad.
Karen, go ahead.
Sure. I think we see this a lot in communities where there's been project after project, and sometimes they just get confused, what are we talking about now? And I think just our approach of like seeing what has worked for Needham and where you are with that would be the first thing that we'd want to do, and make sure that we are identifying the project clearly to people. Education's a really important piece of this. I heard you talking about trees earlier, but just really understanding like that little piece of the decision of, how do we put all this money into green infrastructure and make sure it is there for the next 30, 50 years. But the whole approach to outreach, we do take into consideration what has already come to this point and what people have, been through with the meetings and so forth, to sort of figure out like what our best approach to this project would be.
And I think the residents in Needham are fortunate as well, right? That the town leadership wants to communicate with them. Most communities, they get scolded for not communicating enough. So it's not very often that we see fatigue from communication, but we definitely want to work with the leadership of the community to make sure that there isn't that fatigue, because we do know that the community is going through a lot of changes and implementing a lot of new changes that are improving the community overall. We don't want to overdo it either. We understand that people's time is valuable, and we want to be respectful of that time.
I just want to add one thing. Sorry. A really nice way to keep encouraging engagement is to make it fun, and not just telling them information or saying, let us know what you think. So we like to have engagement activities that are interactive. We're currently working with Newton on their Newton Highlands redesign, and that's a similar corridor that has very real space trade-offs. So one of the activities we had at an open house was a board that's, the right-of-way width, and we had different pieces that's a bike lane or travel lane or parking lane. And we said to them, what would be your ideal cross-section? Like, a trade-off has to be made, and it just lets them realize on their own, wow, I really can't fit everything. But it's just a new way for them to come to that realization on their own instead of you telling them.
I really appreciate the fact that you guys have presented a vision for us to play around with and think about. And you mentioned that the key to making this vibrant is people. So if you had to say, like, what are the top design elements that bring people? Like, what's, I know it's complicated, but like, if you had to boil it down to a few things, like, what are the things that we don't have that if we got, we would start to get more of that vibrancy?
I know Karen's just itching to answer this, but I will just start off that you need to show people that they're prioritized, and that is clearly, the space is so dominated by pavement right now that we really feel like reallocating some of that space to places that can be enjoyed by non-motorists is step one in bringing people to the downtown more.
Yeah, I would say making people feel comfortable. Like right now, you have one side commercials, entities, and then the other side is this beautiful park that you've just put a lot of money into, and the traffic just feels like a wall between the two. So really, like making people feel comfortable being down there, not inside their cars. Wanting to go there and, sit and hang out there and invite their friends, but also attracting people from other places. Just say, hey, Needham's great downtown, let's go hang out there for the day. So it's really about the space for people to linger and let, the vehicles go through, but it is not about the vehicles passing through, yeah.
And I think one of the other components of that too, and something that we touched on early in the presentation, is the connection points to that downtown.
Yeah.
So you have neighboring neighborhoods around the downtown. We have to make sure that we take that into account as part of the planning process and the community visioning, is making sure that we're making those connections so that people can get there, not just by vehicle, but through walking or biking, and a lot of other different modes of transportation.
And in order to make that sort of multimodal piece effective in that way, to kind of get that mode switch from car to bike or walking, or is to make it really comfortable for everyone, not just your, advanced biker, but, would you send your 10-year-old on your bike downtown if you lived in one of these neighboring streets? So just that piece is really critical to, whatever the changes are invested on Great Plain, they really have to radiate to the neighborhood, yeah.
Thank you. I really liked the people-centric part of it. It's a great point. On the photo you showed at the beginning with no people, either how many hours in Photoshop did that take? Or was it shot on Super Bowl Sunday?
I can promise you there is no Photoshop on that picture.
All right, that's concerning. That's very concerning.
It was very recent.
It was Monday.
This past weekend.
Okay, I guess everyone sleeps late. Everyone's well rested, that's fine. Really love the part about integrating art, and I even like the intersection of the topo map quality to it. Thank you for being bold, because I think what we do well is we do rectilinear really well, really well. And I like that you were looking for ways to make it sort of punch through the road, even that you maybe turn the road bed a bit. So thank you very much. A question about bikes, because you mentioned it. There are kids, and then there are the 100, beats per minute bike riders.
Sure.
All right. How on some of the stuff, are we making it so bicyclists can go off on a path, or with like 10-year-olds, or are we putting the bikes, like what works best?
Well, bicycles zooming by at 25 aren't stopping to, go into any of your retail or restaurants.
Right.
I think the focus would be on the people who are using the active transportation, whatever it turns out to be, whether it's a shared use path or one on each side, who want to get to the downtown. So typically, we see, the serious bike groups, if they can't zip through, they'll find another way around, and they're comfortable riding in traffic.
Okay.
I think this downtown area, and ones that we have worked on before, where it's really successful bringing people in who might not feel comfortable riding their bike downtown, are the ones that are designed for the most vulnerable user.
Right.
So that's the standard that I would recommend for this.
Okay. It's interesting because we banned bike riding downtown.
Yeah,
So it's like, I love what you're doing, but I'm like trying to figure out, wrap my head around it.
Right.
But I think
And I
it's
there's-
absolutely valuable.
Yeah, we're working with the town right now where we can't fit everything. So we bring the bikes to the edges, there's mixing zones, people understand that, pedestrians are really walking here, so you can walk your bike through or park it, but, so I think there are many decisions to be made about that, yeah.
Okay. And you all asked how bold we want to be. I'd say very bold.
Yeah.
I would love
great,
to see some
yeah.
real good reimagining.
Yeah, well, you've got a beautiful start, so there's a
very
lot to work with, yeah, yeah.
All right. Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay. Next, we have Weston and Sampson, correct? You want to introduce them? Okay, I'm doing so. Do we have Heidi with us? Marcus doesn't, she's back. She's back, okay, good. We need a quorum. Okay. Good evening.
Good evening.
Thank you for coming. It's great to see you guys. You want to introduce? This is.
Absolutely. My name is Alyssa Peck, and I'll be the project manager for this project.
Jonathan Law, landscape architect. I'll be the lead designer.
Jeff Santa Cruz, traffic and roadway design.
Again, another person. Thank you. We got a clicker back. Okay, you guys, thank you for coming. Welcome to you. You've done work here before. So let's see, what do you got?
Right arrow.
I mean, I'm hitting the right arrow. I don't know.
There we go.
There we go. Thank you. Well, first of all, I just want to say that we really appreciate the opportunity to present to the select board tonight. As I mentioned, I'm Alyssa Peck. I am a senior project manager in our transportation group, and I'm here today with Jeff Santa Cruz and Jonathan Law. They'll both take a few moments to say a few words about themselves as the presentation carries on. As for me, my technical expertise is in site civil and drainage related design. I have managed several projects, including those in on-call assignments. Yes.
I have a question.
Oh boy.
Let's go.
I'll be ready.
Yes.
Can't wait. I don't want to date myself, but I have been with the company for close to 19 years, so it's safe to say that I have a pulse on what my colleagues bring to the table, and through the different projects that I've managed. I know the right people to bring to a project at the right time, and I expect this to be no different. I will serve as, I'll say, like a client liaison. I expect project communications to come through me, and then I'll filter to our in-house design team, and vice versa. We've identified some relevant projects up on the slide. I won't go through them all, but I just want to point out that there is a lot of project overlap. We have experience in collaborating, bringing our different project teams together and collaborating on several projects. So why choose Weston Sampson? I expect many of you may be familiar with us. We have worked in the town for over 30 years on several different projects. Our staff is familiar with the town's rules and regulations and the town infrastructure. In addition to work in Needham, we've worked in over 235 transportation projects throughout New England, so this project is right in our wheelhouse. And last but not least, our people. We have over 800 people in the company. Our technical, with the technical and design expertise to help the community, to help Needham create the vision for your community. And how do we do that? That's through public engagement, and I'll turn it over to Jonathan to talk a little bit more about that.
It was off. If you're hiring us to use a clicker, maybe we're not the right team for that. But
I think it was the other two.
they tried to sabotage us, right?
Absolutely. Turn it off.
So with every major project that we work on, community engagement is very important, whether it's a streetscape, whether it's a park, whether it's an open waterfront resilient design. Community engagement is very important. People now want to feel as though they are part of a project from the inception, and people want to feel like they're heard. The last thing that you want people to do is to come to a community engagement and not have a voice. So when we do community engagement, we are very cognizant of that. We want our engagement to be fun. We want it to be interactive. We want people to understand the simple graphics. Thankfully, gone are the days where we roll out a sheet of paper on a table and we're all pointing at a plan, trying to, describe a design, but then also describe what a plan is. You know, now, as you've seen from the other teams, everybody can produce beautiful renderings, and that really helps to sell an idea. And obviously, if you can sell an idea and get people on board, it's much easier to keep that engagement positivity going through the entire part of the project. The last thing that you want to do is to get people against the project, because that's not what good community engagement is. It's about bringing everybody together, hearing a voice, and getting consensus. Is everybody going to agree? Absolutely not, and we know that. And if we went into this saying, we're going to get everybody on board on this project, we'd be lying to you. But it's getting a consensus that people want to move forward with, and that's very important. We're very collaborative in our engagement. We've done many different techniques. The images you see above there are from recent engagement with the town of Northborough, which was for a downtown revitalization master plan. The top image was the first community engagement event we held. And we thought, how can we approach this in a way to get feedback from residents without having them to feel the pressure of drawing something or writing something down? So we came up with a technique of producing colored stickers that had certain attributes that we wanted, that we felt were appropriate for the new downtown. So on-street parking, stormwater management, LID stormwater, urban e-island, more street trees, should there be housing, should it be multifamily housing? And we printed these out in stickers, and we asked people to place these stickers where they felt that these components should be on that plan. And it was we then took that information back, and that really helped us to develop a plan, an initial design that we then presented at the second meeting. And not only did that help people to feel as though they were part of this process, which again is very important, it helped us to get lots more ideas than, again, just a couple of people standing up there and trying to hog the pen and draw on a sheet of paper. It was very collaborative. We also had image boards at the side where we allowed people to place colored stickers on the images that resonated with them more than any others. So obviously, the ones that had the more stickers on, we knew that that's what people were drawn to. And I think one thing that's always overlooked with engagement is you have to be a great listener. If you can get all the feedback in the world, and if you don't listen to that and take it on board, then that engagement has failed. So I think as a team and a company in general, we're really good listeners, and that really helps that process. So we're going to just talk about a couple of relevant projects. And this one, if people don't know, this is Concord Main Street. Jeff and I worked on this project, not with Weston & Sampson, but at a previous firm. And that does not mean that that's not part of our experience, because you're hiring a team, you know, so with this team comes our experience, whether it's with Weston & Sampson or on other design firms. Concord Main Street was a really transformative project for downtown Concord. If anybody knew that before, it was a 4-lane highway through the middle of, as you can see on the top right image, a 4-lane highway through the middle of downtown. It was not safe for pedestrians to cross the road. The sidewalks were buckled. They were not ADA compliant. In one section, there was a double-stepped curb from the parking area. I think there were 7 street trees, 3 of them were dead. There was no place for placemaking. There was no space for people to sit outside and dine. And the street itself was just failing. It really was in disrepair. And I think tenant rates were down to like 50%. And the city were forward-thinking enough, much like yourselves, to realize that they needed to have a different approach to this. Just putting some Band-Aids on this was not the right solution. So as a design team, we came in and we did many traffic studies. We had, I think, 20 public engagement up in Concord. I was driving there every other week. And we came to, again, a consensus, not by everybody, but the majority of people, including the city council, to reduce the road diet. And what that allowed us to do was to increase the width of the sidewalks, plant, I think, 70 trees. So that obviously reducing the effects of the urban heat island. We also were thoughtful about how we planted those trees. We didn't want to plant them in tree grates because, as we all know, if you plant a tree in a sidewalk, it's a coffin, and it's a concrete coffin, basically. So we looked at how we could increase the amount of space that the trees are planted in and provide some other place for perennials and ornamental grasses to provide color and texture at certain times of the year. And this project turned out to be a catalyst for downtown Concord. I mean, Needham's a great downtown. I lived in Wellesley, I live in Natick now, so I know Needham very well. And Needham's not struggling like Concord was. But what this project did is it brought future development to some of the vacant spaces in downtown. There was a new hotel opened. So it was a catalyst for further regeneration to this area. And future regeneration is good for any town and city, whether it's booming or not. Do you want to talk anything
Yeah,
about
I
this?
was going to say, a couple of features, as Jonathan mentioned, this was a 4-lane roadway. The state capitol, it's kind of on one end. You've got City Hall right around the corner. You've got, at the time, a struggling theater and whatnot, kind of on the other end. So they were trying to create their own identity beyond just the state capitol. What you see on the left is kind of the final version. They went from that 4-lane piece, decided to go with a 2-lane, slightly wider than your standard 12-foot lane to accommodate some room for the bicycles to kind of have their own area without a designated bicycle lane, so that if people didn't want to be right behind the cars, they could kind of pull over. But one of the unique features that we came up with is that centerpiece, and it's a little hard to tell in that picture, but that's a flush cobble median. And what that allows is if somebody is backing out of a parking space or pulling in, you can go out around them without going into the other traffic lanes and having a problem. As you can see, one of the unintended consequences was it allows the vehicle deliveries to park in the middle and move their products to the two sides if you don't have a designated loading zone on a side street. It actually works really, really well. I'm in this area quite a bit. It also, at intersections, has created turn lanes. So there is some incorporated turn lanes at certain areas. The crossings are much shorter, which is nice. In this picture, you can also see we've been able to accommodate parallel parking with ADA, which isn't seen a lot and actually meet the appropriate ADA requirements. So in that kind of the lower left corner there, Jonathan was mentioning how, you had the 2-step curb on one side. And one of the important features of this project is there were 15 different buildings that did not meet ADA guidelines and were not accessible. We were able to take those, and I think in the end it was 13 of them we were able to bring sidewalks up and down and adjust in those kind of brick areas, some of the elevations, and with road grades to actually bring them into compliance. One of them you can see just in the lower right corner was Phoenix Hall, which had, it's a historic building. There's an old theater in the top and there's a bagel shop in the bottom. They were under a federal lawsuit that they were going to have to put in an elevator. And we worked with the city and staff and even residents to close a side street alley so that we could raise the entire corner of the intersection up. So you had a ramp on one side that now made this building ADA and then steps down the other and incorporate that into the design. It also has places in there for artwork. They do have some permanent. They have some rotating artwork. You can just kind of see one over the tops of the red umbrellas there. A lot of the signage was also scaled down to be more pedestrian scale. If you're going through a downtown and you're at slower speeds, you don't necessarily want these huge signs that meet MUTCD. While they're important, they also kind of take away from everything else you're doing. So we were able to work through that and get some buy-in. One important thing to note too is safety. Not just in daytime. The lower right picture is actually a nighttime picture, and that's not Photoshop. That is an actual picture of what that feels like to be downtown in that quarter. So it's important why we look at all these features for daytime, that if you want a vibrant downtown, nighttime has to be a consideration as well.
And this project won about, I think, 7 design awards nationally. So it's,
2 nationally. We won APW, Project of the Year, as well as ITE Complete Streets of the Year, and then 5 local, including ACEC, and we actually got a commendation by ADA for the amount of ability that we transformed the corridor.
Quick question. You mentioned tenant rates were down by about 50%. Do we know if they've gone up?
Yes.
Yeah, I think it's over
They're-
90% now.
Yeah,
something
it's
like that.
somewhere between 85 and 90, and there's also been complete tear downs and redevelopment. There's been some, one building was ready to be condemned, and they got an owner to actually come in and put all housing on the upper 3 floors, and the bottom is now retail.
Okay.
So they really, it's expanding little by little. We now have we have an independent theater. We actually have the Center New Hampshire Stage, which does a large venue, a medium venue, and then we have another theater. So we actually have an area of that southern section of this roadway that's now become kind of like a little mini theater and art district, which has been really nice. Even the upper floors have started to be renovated and reused.
And just one last thing I'll say on this project, and we're approaching this presentation a little bit differently. We have a design that we've developed, but the design is our interpretation of that. We'd prefer to have everybody else's consensus and everybody else's opinion before moving forward with the design. So we're presenting today as a team that we hope that you can see doing this design for you and trusting in us to deliver that. And that's why we're presenting some of these projects that we've completed, because the proof is in the pudding with what you see before you. And the last thing I'll say on this project is, with any streetscape project or any project where you're approaching removing parking, people just lose their minds. Oh my goodness, you're going to take 2 parking spaces away, we'll never remain in business. And during our engagement with this, we had all the business owners that were there who'd been there for many years. And their argument was, well, if someone can't park outside my store, I'm going to go out of business. So, you know, being the design experts that we are and have done many projects like this, we recognize that if you provide a safer environment for people to walk, wider sidewalks, trees, places to respite, sit, much comfortable place for someone to walk down, you may park 3 blocks away from your original destination. But so instead of walking and parking and going to 1 store, you may end up going in 5 or 6 stores and spending more money. So the argument that we had turned into fruition because of the success of the street. And I think if you went back today and asked those business owners who were, you must park out my store for me to still be in business, I think they'd agree that this was a real success story. So
I can actually guarantee you that's what they say.
I was going to ask. Yep.
I know, I'll be honest with you, I live in this community. So I can speak firsthand to a lot of I've lived there my whole life, so the business owners know me. So I was constantly getting pulled in for little side conversations during the design. This project is still talked about and still indicated how much what was transformative for the downtown. And the business owners will tell you, business went up. They even saw, we worked very hard with the contractor during construction. You know, the previous one, I heard a lot about construction. This street was actually open fully for businesses all the time during construction. And a lot of the work was done during the day. There was a few pieces done at night, some critical, but most of it was done during the day by literally moving traffic to one side, 1 lane in each direction, and building the whole other. The contractor, there was public engagement through the entire thing. There was weekly chats with the city engineer and with the contractor. The contractor had specific requirements that their staff couldn't go sleeveless. They weren't supposed to wear shorts. I mean, they understood this was a downtown and how respectful they needed to be of the business. They would go out and they literally were cleaning the windows to help the businesses to not have the dust and the dirt, because they realized that was obtrusive to them. So these are some things that really were positive, and it made a positive impact on the community and how they saw that project at the end, because the construction wasn't as painful as they thought it was going to be. They all thought they'd be out of business, and they weren't. There was actually 6 or 7 new businesses that opened up during construction, which you kind of wouldn't expect that. It'd be like opening a business during COVID, you know, you just didn't expect it.
okay, so the next relevant project is Pleasant Street, which is in Claremont, New Hampshire. As you can see, top right image, it was a 2-lane roadway with parking on both sides. Again, another failing street. Occupancy rates were very, very low. And on this design, we again altered the road diet. We went to one-way roadway with parking, angled heading parking on one side. And that allowed us, as you can see, to increase the sidewalk width significantly, which then again helped us to plant lots of new street trees. It helped to be able to bring those street trees further away from the building, because as they grow, obviously they're going to get bigger. And again, store owners complain that's going to block my sign. And so the further away you can get them from the buildings, the better. And we also had placemaking, small placemaking spaces, but placemaking doesn't need to be big for it to be successful. And then finally, so the current project we're working on in the city of Boston, a very prominent block in Back Bay. Similar, ADA accessibility, pedestrian gathering and placemaking, a place to feel safe at night. And we have a lot of coordination there with the Boston Planning Department. So again, lots of stakeholder engagement on this project.
That's Stewart Street, right?
It's Berkeley and then Stewart on one side and St. James Avenue on the other. So when we're finally getting to our design here. So when we approach this design, again, this is our interpretation of the documents that we reviewed. Obviously, this will change significantly, as would any other of the designs that you've seen before you tonight. And we understand that. We're not coming here and saying, this is how it has to be. Again, we're great listeners, so we want to hear what people have to say. And if there's significant changes are required, then we're prepared to do that. So we reviewed the documents you can see on the right-hand side, and this was our interpretation of what this certain section of downtown could look like. So similar to any downtown project, you have a certain right-of-way. Unfortunately, we can't pick those buildings up and move them back 20 feet to widen the sidewalks. You have to do it in another way. And that typically is either by reducing travel lanes or taking away parking. So in this concept, we took away some travel lanes. And that, again, was based on some of the information and traffic studies that we looked in previous work that was done. What that allowed us to do, as you can see on the bottom image, is create wider sidewalks, provide spaces for outside dining and public gathering, provide places for street trees to bring them further away from the buildings, and introduce some LID stormwater management, so rain gardens and things of that nature. I overheard earlier a question about street trees and how they survive in an environment like this. We've started using, or in our projects, a system called SilverCell. It's not the cheapest system by any means, but studies have shown it's far more better for tree health than structural soil. What it is, it's a system of basically rigid plastic tubes that support the weight of the sidewalk above it. And instead of filling that void with structural soil, you fill it with planting soil. So you're given a great environment for a street tree to thrive. Because the last thing you want to do is spend all this money, plant all these trees, and in 5 years they've either not grown very much, so there's no visual impact, or they've died. So if you are going to do a project of this nature, our belief is that you should do it correctly, and planting trees in this way is the best way for them to survive. And then obviously there's sections here where we can have permeable pavers, which again reduces the amount of stormwater runoff going into the existing infrastructure that you have. And obviously planting street trees also help to reduce that amount of runoff that goes into the stormwater below the surface of the road. So if we look at the plan, so we're going from the MBTA tracks on the right to Maple Street on the left. As I mentioned, in a section we've reduced the travel lane to 1, where we go back to closer to the train track for stacking purposes. We've gone back to 2 lanes. It's allowed us to, again, increase the sidewalk widths. So the pedestrian movements allow for more passage through there, but it also allows for a larger area of the furnishing zone, we'll call it, where you can have tables and chairs. You can reduce the amount of clutter on the street, so remove the parking meters and install one parking station per block. So again, visually making the street more appealing. There's a section there for an area where you could have some rotating art. And again, pedestrian safety is very important, so we've introduced bump outs to reduce those crossing widths for people using this part of downtown. Again, there's street trees in here, and there's moments, you know, for example, Camellas on the corner there. There's moments where we've provided outside dining, and for placemaking, you could incorporate some festoon or catenary lighting for, again, a sort of ambience at night. And then if we look at the image here, looking back down towards the MBTA tracks, so you'll see on the right-hand side, and again, this is our interpretation of you know, some monumental signage. It could include some historical information. We did similar in Concord and other projects where we have signage that lets you know where you are, what the businesses are on that street, and you know, maybe the history of this part of Needham. Places for people to sit, either in a fixed location like the granite seat walls, or again, the opportunity to have movable tables and chairs. And within that furnishing zone, the brick area, you know, we propose that those pavers would be permeable, again, to help with stormwater management. Understanding that anything of that nature requires more maintenance by the town. So again, when we approach a design problem, or we come up with a solution, we, as a design team, as a firm, we don't like to just say, this is our idea, and you know, that's the approach. We like to speak to the people who maintain this area, because we could present a design that everybody loves, but DPW are like, oh my goodness, what have they done? Like, they've made our life so much harder. So the engagement isn't just about you and the residents, it's about DPW and the people who maintain these spaces. It's all as equally important as the rest. If one fails, all the cards fail. So, you know, it's very, very important that we talk to everybody and understand their wants and needs, whether they use this space, whether they work in this space, or whether they maintain this space.
And sometimes it's even educating them on a different way that might have worked in another community to do maintenance. It may not be harder, might be easier. Concord is one, again, I know we keep pointing back to that, but it was such a successful project because it had buy-in from the beginning with the maintenance. So some of just the curb returns and how you do your corners and things that make it easier for a plow to get in there and get out without leaving huge drifts of snow. You know, a lot of communities remove their snow from the downtown. This year. Yes. We'll knock on wood for that one. But I mean, but that's a consideration, or like just cleaning out your stormwater or where they're located. And, you know, being also that we are a multidiscipline firm is, as you go through this, you may find you have water, sewer, other utility conflicts that maybe don't allow the vision just as you saw it without some relocations and some work. So we bring that aspect to the team, that we can also look at that and kind of say, is there another way to maybe reasonably, you know, accommodate moving something to make that vision happen for you?
And in some of the previous studies that were done, can you hear me? It talked about having a banner or some announcement that you'd reached downtown. We think you can do that in other ways. As you know, in this section of downtown, the Cobra Head street lights are very large and not very pedestrian scale. So it's already daunting when you walk through that area as a pedestrian. So you can see in this image, you know, because we've brought the sidewalks further into the street, you know, we're proposing much smaller scaled pedestrian lighting, and with that, with banner arms on them. So you can announce you've arrived in downtown in certain ways without having this huge structure, which would cost a lot of money over the street. Yes.
Okay.
Because it's like a snake. So if we go to the next image, again, it's just looking straight down the sidewalk. So you'll notice a wider sidewalk. Again, ADA compliant concrete sidewalks are even brick pavement is ADA compliant, but the best walkable surface is typically cast in place concrete. And then you'll notice the furnishing zones that I mentioned, places for bikes to be stored, and then areas for people to sit and dine.
One thing as we go through the entire design process, it's being considerate of all the users. We always built main streets over the years as traffic centric. And now we've realized that's not the best way to really build a downtown. So, we look at a much more, pedestrian friendly, Jonathan and I both mentioned features that were kind of put in to be more pedestrian scale and be more conducive to a pedestrian. Things in this day and age to consider are, that active zone up along the curb and curb management. There are so many DoorDash and Ubers and Lyfts. That needs to be accommodated. That needs to be looked at is how do we accommodate those features in so they're not double parking? And maybe it means working with shop owners and people to have distinct zones where these things occur, even if you got to walk a couple, blocks over to get to it. So it's something else we look at, as well as transit. How much of it do you have? How much do you want? Do you want full bus stops in the downtown, or can they be just around the corner on a side street because that's the way that they go? Things like that we'll take into consideration and listen to, the staff and the public and say, what do you want? Where do you want it? Too many times people say the design starts the day we get here. Kind of not. The design really needs to start after we've done some listening to what you want. Because if we start the day we get here, we've already got a preconceived notion of what we think you need. We haven't listened very much. So we're saying that really starts with public engagement, and then that informs the design process as we move forward.
Then these last two images, again, just talk about or showcase how you could potentially place make an area to make it it's not going to be New York and 24-hour city, but it's certainly a space that can be utilized after dark. I'm sure some of again, Camellas is just right there, would love to have an outdoor space that people can sit and enjoy during the summertime when the lights go on and the temperature still maintain a relative high heat. So again, you can see planting there, color and texture, places for the stormwater to gravitate towards. I'll just touch on in this design, we don't have a bike lane. Again, that's not because it's an oversight. If bike lanes are needed, then obviously the discussion is, does the parking go away? I mean, as I mentioned, you have a certain right of way between the buildings which cannot move. And if you want to fit everything in here that you want, then some things have to go, or some things have to be reduced. So that's why you don't see any bike lanes in here, because we in this sort of schematic process felt that wider sidewalks in this particular area were more important than bike lanes. And then there's just an image to show you what it would be like at night. I mean, I'm already eating a slice of pizza on that table, so. And that completes our presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That was great. Yeah. Yes,
Thank you all so much. And I think this is the first time that I heard about the DPW kind of partnership and working with them. And Alyssa, I know you haven't got a chance to say a whole lot, but kind of
That's my fault.
I know. That's what I was saying. So when it comes to that partnership and we're working with Karis and her team, how would that look as far as that collaborative process from your point of view?
Yeah, I mean, I imagine sitting down at day one and working with the DPW to figure out what their expectations are. How do you want to work the communications? And like I said, I imagine it coming through me, but maybe there's another scenario that would work better for them. But getting their feedback at the outset, also speaking to other municipal departments, planning, conservation, whoever might, have a stake in it. We like to bring people to the table early on. So that way, there's no surprises when we're, at 75% design, and we find out that something is a concern.
And then how's that gone in the past? How's your relationship kind of gone, or how have you worked with, I guess, from, other projects and things that you've done?
Well, I'd say a lot of our business is repeat clients. So I think
Okay.
we do a good job of maintaining our relationships and keeping our clients happy. So I'd say it's been pretty successful.
Thank you.
What she doesn't tell you is her husband worked as a DPW director, so if she didn't have that communication, she definitely would hear about it.
I mean, okay.
That's excellent. Okay, Heidi, I can't be there. Oh, yeah, I can see you. Any
Yes,
questions?
thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I really appreciate the thought that has clearly gone into the sustainability, not only of the street trees, but the stormwater management and so on. Your comment about the permeable pavers led me to wonder if one of the things that you can do for us, if chosen, and part of the design would be future costs, so that we could have an understanding of how the changes that we make will influence our finances in the future, not only taking care of it, but making sure that we can maintain it in the long term. Thank you.
Yeah, we've done that on previous projects where we've presented a design and then given the client not only future maintenance costs, but also a maintenance plan of how they should maintain the spaces that they have. So for example, if a town or city does not have permeable pavers, they've probably got no idea or very little idea how to maintain those. So we're happy to give, an instruction manual or a permeable pavers for idiots guide, to anybody who requires that.
What do you think for Needham are the things that are the kind of biggest opportunities for us as we think about this?
Well, I think that you're obviously heading in the right direction. You've already seen some remodeling of downtown with the town green there in front. There's been some other smaller improvements done in certain sections of downtown. I think if you have a forward-thinking town committees that are pulled together, that really helps with the visioning process. If people want to improve and want to address climate change, which is everybody's buzzword now, Weston and Sampson had a climate resiliency group 15 years ago. We recognized that that was a big topic that was going to come up, and we have our own climate resiliency group, and that's just not dealing with sea level rise. It's also looking at urban heat island. It's also looking at LID stormwater management. And for towns and municipalities, we've done urban heat island surveys, so we can say, that helps to inform our design as we move forward, that these are the hot spots in these certain areas. So we probably could do with some more trees in those zones. But yeah, if we have a committee and stakeholders who really want to push the envelope, then that's a lot better for us.
Thank you. Can I answer my question about drainage? It seems like this is your wheelhouse, right? Okay, good.
Well, it depends what your question is, but yes.
Well,
in which case, I have no idea.
August 8th, we had the most expensive 90 minutes in Needham history, which we got a rainstorm that dumped 5 inches in 90 minutes, overwhelming everything except the sewer. So no, coming into a redesign, we need to envision that. In fact, with climate change, these unpredicted micro storms will be happening more often, or we'll have a drought. But either one, we have to be prepared.
Yeah.
So that's what I'd like to think that. Okay.
Yes.
Could you speak to that?
So, I mean, as you've pointed out, I feel like these high rain events, these 500-year storms are unfortunately not happening with such lack of frequency, I guess. We can definitely look into, we can we have the capabilities to do hydraulic analysis. We can look at the watershed, see what's contributing to the downtown area, and, you know, see whether or not your infrastructure is capable of handling these higher design storms.
Okay. We even have, I believe, the capacity to put cameras down existing utility structures and evaluate them in that way as well.
Great.
Did I answer your question?
That's lovely, thank you. And then one final question. You enjoy the Concord, New Hampshire project. That seems, you guys are excited about that one. What were the fun elements of it? Like it works, and that's important, but what was it that business owners, residents say, like, this is what makes it fun?
Fun for me was how many people I would meet in the community that said, you know, at the beginning, it'll never work.
Right.
You can't go from 4 lanes down to 2 lanes, it'll back up, it'll be the worst nightmare, you know, nobody will ever. And now to see those same people with a smile on their face and be like, wow, you know, I'm glad we listened to you and worked with you because this does work. I think seeing how much pride Concord takes in it, to be honest with you, we just had our mayor just retired after 26 years. He's the longest standing mayor, and this was his legacy project. And that's when they had kind of the party outgoing, that was the big thing that was mentioned about is, you know, maybe the plaque with his name needs to go on it. The fun piece was just, you know, it used to be a street where you stepped out as a pedestrian and you kind of did the, you know, Hail Mary, because you wondered, the first car might stop because you were right there at the sidewalk, but then the second one would blow right by. Now, people stop and the people on the crosswalk actually wave at you like, hey, thank you for stopping. And there's just this more openness and friendliness between the drivers and the pedestrians. It's not that driver that's got the blinders on and says, I need to get from here to here as fast as I can. They realize it might only be 15 or 20 miles an hour. So by narrowing the road, having these better crossings and activating the space to put more pedestrians there has a natural traffic calming effect on its own. Without having to put speed humps and chicanes and all these other things, it just naturally, because of the shared use of the space, has occurred.
Excellent.
And actually planting street trees has historically shown helps to reduce traffic speeds in urban environments and increase property values as well. So.
Okay, you guys, thank you very much. It was a great presentation. Really appreciate it. Thank you.
So Chair, just a reminder, we have one more presentation on March 12th.
Very good. I look forward to it. I love this stuff. This is great.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Oh, we have the clicker back. Wow.
Nice.
All right.
Step one.
All right. On the town manager issues, are we done with that, or you still have your?
No, I still have two.
2 more. All right, here
We're
we
not
go.
done yet.
Let's tee you up for town meeting update.
Right. So, Mr. Chair, as we talked about when you closed the warrant, we had 2 more opportunities to make non-technical corrections. The non-technical corrections, particularly commas and spelling errors, will be done up to the day we print. So that's tonight and March 12th. So there's a few items that I will ask the board to approve this update, and there's a few items that I wanted to highlight. I also wanted to please remember that this is still a draft. It will be a draft through the next iteration. So I think it's unlikely, but the article numbers could still change. So that's, just to bear that in mind.
Okay.
Last Wednesday, the committee that the board created to evaluate the concept of a bylaw and charter review periodically, which Ms. Dowd is on, and Ms. Cooley, came up with a great recommendation that's listed now as Article 38. The committee had recommended that the board insert an article dealing only with the bylaws. It's an easier approach. It only requires a bylaw change and not a charter change. And they felt that the issue of amending the charter or reviewing the charter is a much bigger issue and requires more thought than the time that we had it. So, but under Article 38, the proposal is that there's a committee of 7 individuals, including designees again of the select board, the planning board, the school committee, the finance committee, the moderator, including the town clerk, and one town meeting member appointed by the other 6. So that's a way to make sure everybody on the committee is involved in the selection of the candidate, who I'm sure we would be doing advertising and getting buy-in for. And Ms. Dowd can probably express better, but the concern on the part of the working group, which was really good, was to make sure that this notice was mostly on the text and making sure that it's relevant, that there aren't errors in it, that it flows, that when we add something, we haven't missed something. That was really the overarching basis, and that individual appointed and elected boards who have sections of the bylaw are expected to be doing their review and making recommendations when they think that things need to change. It's not a overarching, this committee will be deciding, or taking a look at, for instance, the sign bylaw and going through that with a fine tooth comb. They may look at the sign bylaw to make sure that the words are still correct and the numbering works, but Kathy, did you want to add to that?
Yeah, I would just say that the purpose of the committee is to do a holistic review. The purpose is not a different way to get at new policies. So that we're always, at every town meeting, we're always changing our bylaws, and the thought is that there's value in looking at the whole thing, and especially at things that may become obsolete over time or in conflict with new things that we have. Things that don't make sense. So it's really that holistic review. And I think there was some concern that somehow this would become some sort of Uber committee and take over policy from other committees. And so there's language written in the bylaw that will, prevent that and make it very clear what this is for. And I think it is also designed to have good representation across the different boards, so we'll have very different points of view. The other thing is with the designee, there is language in there. The designee cannot be anyone. The designee, if it's other than for the moderator, which is a special case, but the designee needs to be a former member of that board, so that they have sort of a sense of the board as an institution.
A couple other changes. We've been working with the Finance Committee on finalizing the FY25 budget, and one of the items that the Finance Committee had requested was changing in the funding source from the public health technical consulting from one-time funds to the tax levy. So that is a change that we're recommending. In the article that we inserted with respect to the town school information technology consolidation, there's additional language adopting Mass General Laws, Chapter 71, Section 31M, School Council, School Labor Council, and town operating budget. The Finance Committee did submit under the bylaw requirement last week its proposed budget, and we'll keep working with them. The piece that is not settled on that is how to handle the information technology consolidation. And so we're meeting, the chair, vice chair, temporary chair, and I will be meeting with the Finance Committee tomorrow night to talk about that. So those are the changes. I don't expect anything major in the next iteration. There may be an article that might move to the special, but in the planning board had to move its hearing on the solar zoning. So I'm not sure we know in time whether to move it, so it could end up in both places and one would be withdrawn. So I don't expect a lot of movement. I think the final version on March 12th will look very much like this one.
Okay. Do you need a vote on this?
Yes.
All right. Or anyone would make a motion.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
I move that the board vote to approve updates to the warrant for the 2024 annual town meeting.
Second.
Okay. Any discussion? All right. Hearing none, let's vote. Heidi.
Yes.
Marcus.
Yes.
Kat.
Yes.
And I vote yes. All right, excellent.
If one town meeting weren't enough, here's another one. Preliminary list of warrant articles for the May 13th special town meeting. This, the board will be asked to open this and call for the special town meeting at your next meeting. But the things that we're thinking about at this point for that warrant, as we talked about, the auditorium upgrades and improvements, the school department had requested, along with the public facilities folks, that this be moved to the special. In a strange way, it means it can be done earlier because the special is sure to adjourn on that night. There's a general law acceptance that we're pursuing with respect to bills under $100. I didn't write my notes. Last year we withdrew the special permit funding that Children's Hospital provided for Kendrick and Third, so we need to put that back on. And we're still working with the Commonwealth to see if the design that we would like can move forward, but if not, we will have a recommendation to what to use that money for. We will likely have line item transfers between numbers on the three budgets. There is a proposal for an amendment to the Technology Advisory Board that's included in the annual town meeting. The tab is meeting between now and your next meeting, and if they require further conversation, we may ask that be moved to the special. Another item that the Finance Committee had requested, the funding for property surveys for town-owned land has moved back and forth between the operating budget and a financial warrant article. The Finance Committee had asked that we take it from the budget and put it as a financial warrant article, so that's here. On occasion, we run out of time with collective bargaining, so sometimes we put it in both warrants to see, so we can make sure that we have an extra week essentially to keep moving. There's an additional rescinding of debt. You recall the property acquisition on Charles River Street is under the annual, and this is final borrowing for the Sunita Williams. Now that project is now complete. And then there is unfortunately another unpaid bill of a prior year, so, as happens in very big organizations. So no action on this item, Mr. Chair. And just one other item, you recall the Healy Driscoll administration filed the Municipal Modernization Act, which is, as the Lieutenant Governor likes to say, the nerdy, geeky kind of thing that local officials really like to talk about, and it really is. The Joint Committee on Municipalities and Regional Government had its first hearing on this bill today, and I did testify with the MMA on the portion of the act that would set up a commission on other post-employment benefits, which is the funding of unfunded liabilities. It's sort of a nerdy, geeky passion of mine, unfunded liabilities. And so Needham has, as we're always telling you, has done an amazing job on funding. We were early to the discussion of it, and the community's been very supportive, and we had money in the account when the economy has run up, starting in 2002. So we've done really well. So that's why MMA had asked us to talk about our experience, but also this commission will help other cities and towns that they didn't start early, they didn't have the money to start reserves. How can the Commonwealth help them? So that was great today.
Thank God for nerdy and geeky. That's right. Excellent.
That's all I have.
All right. Committee reports. Any board members wishing to report on anything?
It might have been covered.
Yeah, covered. Okay. So we have a more nuanced discussion. Let's see. All right, no, then Heidi, anything?
Yes.
Nothing
Since
happened
we,
phone, right?
yeah, well, I mean, Hone has met a million times in between every select board meeting, so there's always something going on there. Our last meeting, I honestly don't remember the date, but it was very long and very productive. We met to finalize details on our base compliance map and to lay out our strategy and define our zoning for our neighborhood housing map, which we're sort of calling our bonus. I want to reiterate, as we did in this meeting, that this is one map, one strategy that we're taking to town meeting in two separate portions to allow them to consider each part of this separately. We anticipate having another meeting, excuse me, on Thursday evening to further refine some little tweaks to both of those maps so that we can be ready with our fiscal analysis and department reports on the final versions of those maps for our March 7th meeting, and then, of course, to plan to bring that information to the public on March 28th at our final public meeting.
Thank you. I'm looking forward to meeting on the 29th again. That'd be a good one. What's another meeting? Okay, seal and branding. Actually, we did it. We met last week with Mark Favorman. He gave us a presentation on options for wayfinding, and he showed other people's stuff. It was sort of like doing open houses, and you can see what other people do. It's kind of cool to see. It's very good. We're going to do brainstorming next meeting. And I also had I met with the Needham High School Greater Boston Project class today on town government and town meeting. And I like to flex that I was in town meeting for 12 years before doing select board. So it was great. The students were great. They're fantastic. But during it, I thought that Michael Fee will be incredibly jealous of me for doing this. So none of us should say a word to him. And anyone watching at home, don't say a thing. And, but it was a great time, and I hope learned something. They're very smart kids, so it was great. Okay. Next, we have normally say let's adjourn, but we're not going to adjourn. We're going to move that the select board move into executive session pursuant to exception 3 to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining with the Needham Independent Town Workers Association, the ITWA, and Needham Independent Public Employees Association, the NIPEA, where an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining position of the town should the chair declare and the chair so declares. And we're not going to return to open session prior to adjournment. Can anyone make that motion? Like so move it?
So moved.
Anyone want to second it?
Second.
Okay, so we're going to executive session. We have to vote on this, right? So Heidi, how we do?
Yes.
Marcus?
Aye.
Kathy?
Yes.
And the chair votes aye. We are not adjourned. We're going to executive session. Thank you.
Have a good night, everyone.